Joining us now on the Deseret First Credit Union hotline is Trevor Matich, ESPN college football insider and expert and college football national champion. Trevor, we thought Mississippi State might be a trap game. When you look at what happened, was it, or do you chalk that up as just a tough matchup for BYU?
You know, that's kind of weird. You take a team that was ranked number one in the nation a couple of years ago and call it a trap game now. But, yeah, I didn't think it was a trap game. I think that it was an SEC opponent who's had a strong pedigree in recent years, even though they're reloading in a few positions. Even so, they've got a lot of SEC talent littered all through that roster. And this was a game that they really wanted to win. So, you know, I didn't see this as a trap game so much as a quality opponent that has a lot in common with BYU, that BYU just had to hit in the mouth and beat the old-fashioned way.
BYU made enough plays to win in this game. Do you think that had anything to do with the schedule and who have they've already faced this year?
I think that has a lot to do with it because BYU now has a habit, and that habit is win a close game. Somebody make a play. Teammates have other teammates' backs. Teammates trust the coaches to put them in the right spot. There's a belief there. And people say that teams get lucky, and they do sometimes. But teams that hustle, teams that work hard in practice and then fly to the ball in games tend to have the most luck because they tend to have more football players around the ball doing the right things. And BYU has developed that habit of flying to the ball while doing the right things. And I think that's one of the ways they've won so many close games. I mean, think about it. The key play to ice the game or to win the game at the end in that last play in overtime was a pass defense in the end zone by a linebacker, right?
Yeah.
Fred Warner. So you're looking at a BYU team that has learned not just how to make plays, but they have an expectation that they'll step up and make plays.
Trevor, we knew that Mississippi State was going to load the box against Jamal Williams, and we knew that BYU was still going to try and establish the run. 26 carries, 76 yards. By no means eye-popping stats, but what did you think of Jamal Williams' record-breaking performance against Mississippi State?
Well, it was tough and gritty. When I watched that game, especially early, I saw Mississippi State, was tough in the front seven. But my first thought was Mississippi State playing in the SEC will recognize Jamal Williams. They will recognize his style of running, his physical, aggressive style of running that doesn't end until the whistle blows. I mean, just because you have him wrapped up or at least corralled doesn't mean that he's about to protect the ball and go down. He will still seek out an opponent and try to inflict some punishment so that he can get another 1 or 2 feet as he drives some tackler onto his back. And so I thought it was a gritty performance. It was an SEC-style performance, not just by Jamal, but by the offensive line as well.
Winning's awesome because you can look at the game and you can feel better about maybe a part where you struggled, but hey, your team won. BYU had 14 points in regulation and 261 total yards. Did they take a step backwards on offense?
No, I think they faced a strong bunch of athletes on defense. And on offense, they've been about what they are, which is pound the ball as best they can and then throw the ball and try to make a few plays here and there through the air. And their passing offense is still in that position. The position that the passing offense is in is one of throw the ball, but not a precision passing offense yet. That requires not just knowing where the open spot will be, but anticipating where the open spot will be and throwing the ball before that spot ever becomes open. This offense requires that, and they're not in a position right now to do that on a regular basis the way they will in years to come once everybody's fully up to speed with the mental side of this offense. And so, the offense on a passing side is kind of dependent on Taysom seeing a guy open, drilling the ball in there, and then that guy making a play on the ball. It's not necessarily predictable, but it is something that they are getting better at doing more often.
ESPN's Trevor Matich with us on BYU Sports Nation. The Cougars have been granted a 35% chance of winning according to the ESPN Football Power Index when they go to the Blue and undefeated Boise State on Thursday night. The 14th ranked Broncos now viewing BYU as a rival, and this looks easily like their toughest game remaining on the schedule. What kind of chance do you give BYU against the top 15 Boise State team?
Well, this is a tough one. I mean, it's tough to win up there to start with. Boise State, is not just a top 15 team. They are in position now to be the Group of Five's representative in the New Year's Six Bowls. The top-ranked team, no matter what that ranking might be, of non-Power 5 schools, gets an automatic berth to one of those biggest of biggest bowls in the New Year's Eve and New Year's Day bowl games. And Boise State right now is that team. So they know that this game is one that they've got to win. If they beat BYU, it'll be one of their two best wins of the season should they win out, the other one being Washington State. And so I think because of the incentive that Boise State has and because of their athletes, I think it'll be a tough ask for BYU to go up there and win. Now, could they beat them? They sure could. They sure could, but they'll have to do it by being more physical than Boise State. Boise State's not a team that you can go up and trick. Boise State's a team that you have to just pound and hit in the mouth. I mean, people think of them as the trick play team, the team that ran the hook and ladder and the Statue of Liberty against Oklahoma, right? But that's not the core of who they are. It wasn't then and it isn't now. And so I think this will be maybe not the most physical game, but certainly one of the most physical games that BYU will play all season long.
How good do you think the Broncos are? Because in ESPN's Football Power Index, Boise State is 30th and BYU is 36th. Sagarin ratings, Boise State 30th and BYU 38th. So the numbers say these two teams are pretty comparable.
The numbers do, and that's why you've got to watch out for the matchups. And Boise State has as good a set of triplets as anybody in the Group of Five, and most teams in the country. Quarterback Brett Rippon is the nephew of Super Bowl champion Mark Rippon of the Washington Redskins. He is a typical Boise State quarterback who knows not just his own offense, but he knows opposing defenses inside and out. And he puts the ball where it needs to be at the right time with predictable regularity. Thomas Spurbeck, Marshall is his father. Thomas Spurbeck, his receiver, his leading receiver, his favorite receiver, is one of the most acrobatic wide receivers in the country. You've got to watch this game, if for no other reason, than to watch Spurbeck go up in some crazy configuration like he's in Cirque du Soleil and come down with that football. Because he's an exciting player to watch and very, very difficult to stop from catching the ball because you can cover him. But when that ball comes down, he's got such a catch radius because of his ability to jump and get to the side to catch that ball. And then at running back as well, they're very, very strong. So because of those matchups, they can stretch the field in any way they want to if they find a weakness for BYU. And conversely, BYU will have to defend the line of scrimmage from sideline to sideline and the vertical passing game from the line of scrimmage all the way to the end zone.
Trevor, schematically, how will BYU find success against Boise State and win on Thursday night?
I think they'll have to expand their throwing game. This is something that we've talked about all year. It would be tough to just force the ball down Boise State's throat, just like it was tough to force the ball down Mississippi State's throat. And so it will come down to the receivers. Now, Nick Kurtz has really stepped up. Noah Trinneman, I mean, he dropped the pass there, but in this last game, but that happens once in a while. The receivers as a whole, you can see growing. And I don't mean growing from a standpoint of catching more balls. I mean growing from a standpoint is more confidence of the physical space that they're in and the physical nature of what's required of them in order to succeed in that space. And you see them getting better and better every week. And this game is no different from what we've talked about in weeks past, that if the running game gets slowed down, you've got to pick it up somewhere, and that's got to be the receivers. Now, another thing that I would think that they would do is start to incorporate more and more of intentional runs for Taysom Hill. I know they haven't wanted to run him too much because they don't want to get him hurt. But at the same time, he's too much of a weapon. And I think we need to get another plan B out there besides just hope the passing game will start to crank out whenever the running game gets slowed down. And I think that other plan B, plan C if you want to call it that, would be to expose Taysom to getting hit. And hopefully he can get down and slide so he doesn't get hit too much. But use his unique ability to be one of the most dangerous running quarterbacks in the nation.
Yeah, he's 1-0 as a starter against Boise State, a 17-point win in 2013 as a sophomore. Today there's a press conference for the Big 12. They're expected to announce something. What that something is pretty unclear. It's clear that it's unclear. And we will be live tonight at 6 Eastern Time with BYU Sports Nation to see it. What do you think the Big 12 will do today?
Well, I think that they'll announce they're not expanding, at least not right now. it appears that the networks, ESPN and Fox, might pay them to not expand because according to the contract they have now with their broadcast partners, the broadcast partners will have to pay the Big 12 around $25 million for each expansion team. So they brought in 2 teams. That's another $50 million a year for the length of the contract that the broadcast partners will have to pony up. And if they pay them, say, $1 million a team, even $2 million a team, just to not do that, then the teams make out, and the broadcast partners don't have to pay all that extra money. So that's one thing you've got going on. I don't have any inside knowledge of that, but that just seems to make sense. But I'll tell you this: if the Big 12 right now, the future of the Big 12 is hard to get your brain wrapped around. The ACC just signed a new deal with ESPN that extended the grant of rights for 20 years. Grant of rights means that if any team leaves, let's say Florida State leaves the ACC for some reason, during the space of that 20-year contract, Florida State could go to a different conference, all right, but the ACC will still have the rights and the money from home games that Florida State plays. So that effectively just keeps you in that conference. The Big 12 goes another 5 or 6 years, I think, for the grant of rights. And so the thing to watch for is, do they do something to extend the grant of rights for a longer period of time? If they don't, then Texas and Oklahoma still remain potential teams that could leave the conference. And if they leave, then you'll see the Big 12 dissolve. And so if they don't extend the grant of rights, and that won't be announced today, I don't think, but if they don't, then I would expect to see the Big 12 get broken up and poached out to other conferences. Now think of this, though, because this is an interesting thing. For BYU, let's say that happens. Let's say that, 5, 6 years from now, the Big 12 just disappears. Let's say that Texas goes to the Big 10 with Kansas and Oklahoma joins the SEC or the Pac-12, something like that. It leaves a bunch of orphans out there in the Big 12. Imagine another realignment if that occurs. Imagine BYU joins a new conference, and that conference includes BYU, Boise State, Texas Tech, Baylor, TCU, Kansas State. Imagine that.
Probably Houston in there as well.
Throw in Houston there as well.
Yeah, throw Houston in there as well. That would be an amazing conference. That would be, you might have to, after a few years, call it the Power Six now, if that were to happen. Now,
the new Big East, if you will. Yeah.
Sure, that would become a possibility if Big 12 does not expand, Big 12 does not extend their grant of rights, and at the end of this contract, if Texas and Oklahoma go their own way, leaving the rest of those teams looking for a conference. So, there's all kinds of interesting possibilities that are outside the box.
Yeah, very thought-provoking conversation when you look at what the future of college football holds from a conference realignment perspective. Trevor, we'll finish with this. Right now, other than Alabama, there's this huge debate as to who is the second-best team in the country because all of those other teams have shown some weaknesses. So in your mind, besides Alabama, who's the best team in the country?
Well, Ohio State is the most talented team in the country outside of Alabama. The problem is Ohio State still has not solved their deep passing question. Last year, their offense bogged down a lot because they couldn't throw it deep. And so opposing defenses would come up and jam up the short passes in the running game. This year, they still have struggled at times to throw it deep, and the same thing has happened. That's one of the things that happened up at Wisconsin. So until they get their deep pass game figured out and more predictable, then they're the most talented team, but might not be the best team. I think right now, if you ask me which team was the best overall football team outside of Alabama, I'd go with Washington.
All right, good stuff, Trev. Great to always talk to you, and I guess we wait and see what happens with the Big 12 today. The last time that they got in a room, we all thought we knew what was going to happen, and then the exact opposite happened. So I guess we're planning for more of the same.
Who knows? Tonight by the time for dessert, BYU might be in the Big 12. We don't know.
That would be the dessert.
Trevor, great to talk to you, man.
All right, thanks, guys.